Christ is in our midst. St. John the Solitary once said, "When evening comes, collect your thoughts and ponder over the entire course of the day. Observe God's providential care for you. Consider the grace he has done for you throughout the whole span of the day. Consider the rising of the moon, the joy of daylight, all the hours and moments, the divisions of time, the sight of different colors, the beautiful adornment of creation, the course of the sun, the growth of your own stature, how your own person has been protected. Consider the blowing of the winds, the ripe and varied fruits, how the elements minister to your comfort, how you have been preserved from accidents and all the other activities of grace. When you have pondered on all this, wonder of God's love toward you will well up within you, and gratitude for his acts of grace will bubble up inside you." Welcome to Dad Devotionals. Thank you all for listening and joining me for episode number 2 of season 2. If you haven't listened to the previous 2, you can listen to the first episode of the season, but also the intro and what I have planned throughout the rest of the season. So I share this quote from St. John since the concept is part of the Exodus 90 program. Each night, we're to make a nightly examine, dissecting our day and where we saw God's grace, as well as where we fell short. Now, admittedly, I haven't been the best at this either in practice or completion each night, but I'll get to my progress overall shortly. First off, though, I am happy to say that we have someone who joined the Exodus 90 fraternity for Dad Devotionals. I'm pretty pumped about that. His name is David too, and you can check out an interview I did with him last season as part of the Dads of Orthodoxy series. It's episode 50, so be sure to check that out and listen. Now, regarding the fraternity, I know some of you may be on the fence, you're not really sure, but I encourage you, please consider joining us. You won't regret it. You can look for the link to join in the show notes as well as on Facebook. So if you head over to facebook.com/daddevotionals, you'll be able to see it there at the pinned post at the top. So please consider joining us. I really appreciate it. Now, let me give you a quick rundown of where I am. So what's nice about the Exodus 90 app is it gives you everything you need to keep track of your progress and even shows you how long of a winning streak, if you will, that you're on. So for instance, I'm on day 11 of the program as I'm recording this right now. So right now I have a 10-day streak going in the following areas. So I've done the daily scripture reading. So that includes like their chosen readings and reflections. I've done prayer for the 10 days. This includes the reading that I just mentioned and then prayer to God. And if you haven't listened to any episode yet, so far, it's what they dub the Holy Hour. Now, they say to really get 20 minutes at least in prayerful conversation to God. And honestly, that's mostly what I've been able to do. I include like an Our Father in there and recite Psalm 50 to kind of get everything going. And then I give an account of where I am and where, I hope to have God speak to me. And I know I need to work to really stretch that out. The cold showers, believe it or not, although it's difficult sometimes, I am doing it each morning. I kind of ease into it a little bit, but I've gotten better at just, getting right in there. It's not always fun, but I'm getting more used to it. As I said, kind of, it's still hard to kind of adjust from. You take warm showers your entire life and you get thrown into that. I actually took a shower one afternoon where it started out warm, then I kind of felt guilty and I just turned it to cold. So I want to stick to the letter of the aesthetic practice as best as possible. No alcohol, which helps when you don't keep it in the house very often. As kids, I don't know about you guys, but when I have a beer or two around, and then I have to go and do dad time, it's not easy. I end up it sounds like my younger days. I makes me fall asleep. So it's easy to cut that out to keep my energy levels up. No video games. Again, this one's a little easier for me since I don't have a gaming system. I haven't really played much in terms of video games since college. I'm not a big gamer. No eating between meals. Now, this one has been really hard for me, especially over the weekend. This past Saturday to be exact, I eat out of boredom sometimes, but I've been pushing through and I've been sticking with it. Praise God. And then no TV or sports unless with the family. we don't really subscribe to any cable. I kind of got rid of like Fubo TV, if that's how you say it, YouTube TV, haven't really been using those. The only really thing is like, the kids will have something on, or my wife and I will want to watch something together. So I really don't want to take away that time with her, because, we only get so much time to spend together. We don't always want to, we want to engage in conversation, obviously, too, but at some point, I don't know. I mean, you just want to kind of decompress as well. So, but then, in other areas, that's where I've been pretty good. In other areas, I'd say I haven't been as dutiful. So for instance, when I work out, I like music that pumps me up. I've never been a big, like Christian rock guy or anything like that. So it's hard to abide by the non-uplifting music that's devoted to God aspect. And if you read in the field guide in Exodus 90, they kind of get into, what the non-uplifting music, what you really should avoid. So, I broke that a few times, but the answer, for me, at least, maybe listening to Orthodox programs, which I actually did on a morning run I did today, or audiobooks. And I usually have a couple going at the same, at one time to keep my interest levels up. So I've also had the issues in the following areas. So phone and computer use, which I think for most of us is going to be a problem probably. Desserts and sweets. So I had 3 s'mores the other night. Yikes. So I gotta, we keep sometimes we keep a little too much chocolate and stuff like that in the house. I need to do better of saying, hey, maybe we shouldn't, but then also not partaking if it's around. Sweet drinks. My wife and I had a date night last Friday. So I tried to be good and I think it was like a cold brew, but I don't know, whatever, their machine was down. So I had like a sweet cream version of it. That's what they had. So I didn't want to screw up date night. Fried food. This is what, the next few are my own disciplines that I wanted to instill. Fried foods. I ended up having Burger King. Gossiping, which is an issue my wife and I both have. Daily stretching and ab exercises. I've been really meaning to make this a thing that I do in my life. And I thought 90 days was a chance to do that, but I've been struggling to keep with it. A midday examine. So I mentioned the nightly one at the outset of the podcast, but a midday, if you read in the field guide, they actually, the whole concept behind the examine, again, this is a Catholic program. So they're mentioning like Ignatius of Loyola, which I think is still an Orthodox saint too. Don't quote me, but they're leaning heavily on him when they're talking about some of these ideals that they're doing within Exodus 90. So as part of the Jesuit order that he started, he required the Jesuits to do 2 examines, one a midday and one a nightly. Now I've been struggling to make both, but my initial thought at the outset was, hey, do a midday one too, because it'll help me if I catch some things that I'm not doing so well by like noon or 1 o'clock. Maybe I can do a little bit of self-correction. Maybe God can work on me, help me bring things to mind that I need to do, and maybe have a better evening with the family. No foul language. Sorry to say, it's an issue for me. Displaying a prayerfully positive attitude. And this kind of goes into the midday examine too. I mentioned in the previous season and in episode 1 that sometimes my attitude isn't the best, and to kind of, put aside that anger and have a better attitude around everybody, really. And then also 15 minutes of child engagement. So I know 15 minutes isn't a lot, but when I was doing the MBA, I really struggled to try to find that engagement time, because I was always thinking about what I had to do. So I really wanted to try to be intentional, which is a big word my wife and I throw around a lot because it always seems to get mentioned. So be intentional and, devote 15 minutes to each kid, or at least do it together with them both, where we're doing some kind of activity. Last night, I pat myself on the back when you do things well every now and then. Not to be prideful, but it's like, you got to take the wins where you can get them. And my kids built this like space station fort kind of thing in my son's room. And so we had dinner on the space station. So just something like that. We took our peanut butter and jellies and we ate in there. So just things like that to try to, let them know that I love them, let them know that I care, and that, maybe I can display, at least in a very small sense, the love of God in some way, because He is our eternal Father. So after the first 10 days, as you can see, I haven't been perfect, but I have had my relationship with God more at the forefront, I think, than usual. It's kind of like, when we're all focused on the Lenten season. I know, especially during Holy Week, I felt really in tune with God, and I'm trying to replicate that with this. So now it's really up to me, and up to me, giving it to God, letting His will work through me to really do more as I go through this program, and really kind of build on the foundation that I've laid so far. So I'm more aware of my shortcomings and my thought life in particular. Had some good conversations with my wife on this, who's been acting as my anchor. So Exodus 90 is giving me that at the very least, and I'm grateful for that. And perhaps as I continue to work through this, I'll move even further in my faith life and in these ascetic practices. So pray for me, brothers, if you will. I appreciate that. All right, guys, now it's time for the dad time segment. So I'm going to try to start breaking up the podcast into these segments for, really a more focused discussion and monologues on some specific topics. So I think this will help me provide helpful content to you guys, and, things that are actionable, or at least some thought-provoking items as well. This week, I want to share with you a takeaway from Dr. Philip Mamalakis' book, Parenting Toward the Kingdom. Now, some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with it. And by the way, you can check out my interview with Dr. Mamalakis in episode 22 in season 1. Great one. And I'll make sure that's up in the show notes and the description on YouTube and the podcast itself. So anyway, Parenting Toward the Kingdom is one of the books I'm listening to on Audible that I mentioned earlier. I listen to a few at a time. I like to mix it up and make connections in different areas. It's really where my interests get piqued. So there was this one clip where Dr. Mamalakis discusses a father having an issue with his son. And so apparently the son was having trouble relating to other kids his age. He was 12 years old at the time at the time he was writing this, or at least speaking with them. So, but this frustrated the father, and he wasn't sure really what to do about it. So Dr. Mamalakis had asked him what his experience, meaning the father's, was like growing up in the 7th grade, and how he fared making friends. So the father replies, well, I had trouble relating to kids my age too. And then it clicked. His son was having those same issues. The father then resolved to find ways to help the son overcome this, which, I would imagine most fathers would do. But, obviously, okay, thinking about it here objectively, this may seem obvious to us. But when I think of my kids, I have a 5-year-old son, 3-year-old daughter, I don't always see or want to see me as having the same issues, maybe. And maybe that's just me. But, I want to scold them for misbehaving or not doing what I asked them to do, and then just go and correct the problem. But I'll confess, however, that I do notice things about my son more than my daughter. I'm harder on him, and my wife constantly reminds me of this, because I see a lot of myself in him. I had issues being made fun of growing up. I'm sure many of us can recount stories of being bullied. That's just part of growing up, it seems. And I don't want that to happen to him. So I might be harder on him to, quote, man up, as cliche as that might sound, when really what I should be doing is being more loving and understanding and parenting, but also coaching him in a way, if that makes sense. So do any of you guys relate to this? I want some of these things to be interactive, where I can hear from you guys via comment, emails, Facebook messages. But please send me your thoughts, send me your comments. Am I way off base? Let me know. You can email me at daddevotionals@gmail.com, or head over to facebook.com/daddevotionals. Drop me a Facebook message there as well. All right. I'm serious. I really do want to hear from you. I think it would make for some good conversation. So please do. All right, so I'm calling this next segment the One True Faith segment. Here we'll explore ideas to help you really get more in tune with the Orthodox faith. So today, I actually wanted to share this the stat that I heard recently, one that you actually may know as well, I'm not sure, but things like this are in the news sometimes. But it's the top 1% of in terms of finances have more wealth than the bottom 90%. Now, this may shock you if you haven't heard it, or maybe it did when you first heard it, or maybe it's like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So maybe it doesn't shock you at all. But clearly, what we're talking about here in financial terms, and it's the often cited wealth gap. However, for us, this is the One True Faith segment. So I'm not interested necessarily in the wealth gap or, what where you may fall really in the explanation, why it's occurring or whatever. It's a topic for another time. I use this to illustrate this concept because I'm more interested in a discussion on the spiritual wealth gap. I don't know the numbers, and I don't know if it's ever been tabulated in any way. So I'm saying that up front, that caveat. But I think it's safe to guess that the top 1% of Christians are the saints of the church. Would you agree with me there? And that they have lived lives more worthy of Christ than the bottom 90 to 99% of us, from the beginning of Christendom to today. So my question today is, which wealth gap do you care more about? Do you want to quote, be in that number when the saints go marching in? I know that's cheesy, but to what I thought of when I was thinking of this. Or will you cave to the world and its financial goals for you? So I say this certainly not as someone who's superior. And this is part of the reason that I'm going through Exodus 90. I am chief among sinners, as I'm sure if, many, when we put our pride aside, we'll confess the same. I'm just raising the question. And again, like the previous segment, I want to hear your thoughts on it. I really want to. So again, daddevotionals@gmail.com or facebook.com/daddevotionals and send us a message. I really want to thank you all for listening. If you found any value in this, please leave us a message or support the podcast on Patreon. That would be patreon.com/daddevotionals. Like us on Facebook, share the podcast with your friends and family. And, if you go to facebook.com/daddevotionals, please request to join our Men of Faith Facebook group. I'll be dropping, some content in there, sharing insights, things like that. Love to have you join. Again, join the fraternity if you can. If you go to the Facebook page, you'll see the pinned post at the top. And thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I appreciate all of you. I see the numbers of the podcast continue to grow. It's slow and steady, but I appreciate every listen. Until next time, I'm Dave. Thank you for supporting us. God bless you, and have a wonderful week at home, at work, with your family, and continue your walk with God. Take care.